Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Tech.Strong.Women, where we feature amazing women doing amazing things in tech. I'm Jodi Ashley, executive producer at Tech.Strong, here with my co-host Tracy Ragan, creator and CEO of Deploy Hub and Linux Foundation enthusiast. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to give you a quick update about what's happening here at Tech.Strong. Be sure to register for TechStrongCon 2024. It's happening on April 3rd, so you can still get in there if you want to attend. Also, we are launching a really cool and exciting virtual event called the Artificially Intelligent Enterprise on May 21st. It's going to be a 24-hour global event, so you won't want to miss out. Be sure and go to techstrongevents.com and register for all of our events. And we love sponsors, we love speakers. So keep your eyes open and you'll be able to sign up to do that stuff. And be sure to tune into techstrong.tv every day for amazing content, shows, and interviews. Hey, Tracy, what's on your mind today?
Well, I think a 24-hour kind of follow the sun conference on AI is pretty interesting.
I know, it's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. So, today I often talk about Jenkins, but I'm going to talk about it again because it continues to be a prime tool that companies, enterprises around the world have used. And this happened in late January. About 45,000 Jenkins instances were exposed to an online vulnerability that allowed them to get remote code execution, or depending on your security settings, basically gave you access to the command line and to be able to get access to certain files. 45,000 servers. Everybody has to stay diligent, right? And tools like Jenkins, while everybody works really, really hard to make sure they're secure, you never know when a vulnerability is going to pop up like that. So I just want to put it out there. It was out. You might look for it. It was published back in late January, and it really talks about the exposure and why it's important to fix it. So I'm putting it out there for all you Jenkins users. Look to see if you have that particular version and if you have an issue.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. All right. I am so excited. I've been trying to wrangle this lady for quite some time, but she is very busy. Our guest today is Caroline Wong. Caroline, tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be with you two today. My name is Caroline Wong. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Cobalt. We're an offensive security testing company. I've been working in cybersecurity since 2005, starting off on security teams at eBay and Zynga. In 2011, I published a book called Security Metrics, A Beginner's Guide. In 2022, that book was inaugurated into the Cybersecurity Canon Hall of Fame. I teach courses on LinkedIn Learning, and I host a podcast called Humans of InfoSec.
Very interesting. And I know that you are passionate about teaching and talking about security and cybersecurity at work, which is a really interesting topic because no matter how hard we all work to secure the supply chains, to secure our environments, somebody can use their pet's name, which we probably all do for a password, and all of our hard work is gone. So why don't we start today about talking about cybersecurity at work and how people should approach cyber, what we should know as we do our daily work.
Yeah. First, I just have to say, Tracy, I love that you opened up today's session talking about a vulnerability in Jenkins. This is something that I get really excited about because the thing about software is that it's vulnerable. And unless we're proactively security testing it, unless we're proactively installing fixes, the vulnerabilities are just sitting there waiting to be exploited. And I think that the main concept that I try to communicate in cybersecurity at work is simply that everyone's getting attacked all of the time. All of our organizations are under attack right now. We're just all being attacked, and if folks could understand this and understand that it's something that happens all the time, every single day, and not just sort of a random occurrence, or if you're doing something super important, or if you have some sort of super confidential, restricted information, everyone's getting hacked all the time. And that being said, my sort of first, I would say there's really three things for most people to keep in mind. And this is what I say if I'm talking to my 8-year-old daughter or my 70-year-old mother-in-law. Thing number one, look out for phishing. And if something seems too good to be true, it very well might be. And just take a screenshot and send it to me and I'll check it out. But whether or not you're my literal family member or not, send it to someone you trust and just ask them to take a look at it. And make sure that if there's an opportunity to verify it via some other route, for example, you get a text message and it claims to be from a shipping company, go online, go to their real website, call them up and ask about it. So number one, we are all getting phished and social engineered all of the time. Learn to expect it and learn how to question it. Thing number two, use multi-factor authentication. I'm not saying that it's okay for all of our passwords to be our dog's names, but if it were, and we had two-factor authentication, then we'd be in such a better spot. And these days, that kind of thing is really so easily accessible. So definitely for online banking, definitely for email, really for anything that you really care about, just turn on multi-factor authentication all the time. Do you need to do it for Netflix? Maybe not. Do you want to do it for Amazon? Probably. And then the third thing, and this is really geared toward sort of everyone. All of these tips are geared toward everyone. Update your software. I know how annoying it is. And when it takes me 20, 30, 60 minutes of time where I am unable to access my laptop because Apple has released yet another OS update, by the way, is it just me or do they seem to be coming in really, really frequently? But you know what? I don't care how frequently they come in. You got to prioritize it because hopefully, even if you don't prioritize it, your organization's IT security team is actually making it happen. But what's going to happen if that's the case is it's going to be a Friday morning and you're going to be on an important call. And all of a sudden your computer is just going to start installing and updating. And then you're, it's going to be really inconvenient. So just pick a time, maybe it's the end of a workday and, you're about to go take a walk. You're about to make yourself a cup of tea. Just install the update. Do it for your OS, do it for your laptop, do it for your smartphone. I really think that between those three things, if I could only tell folks three things, those are really it. But I will give a little plug for my Cybersecurity at Work course on LinkedIn Learning. If anyone's interested in viewing that course, you can find me on LinkedIn and on my feed. I've actually got a featured post where you can watch that training at no cost to you, even if you don't have LinkedIn Learning. And one of the things that we did that was really fun was we did a couple of scenarios. So we tried to make it fun. We tried to make it engaging. I like to think that it is pretty engaging and pretty fun as far as cybersecurity training goes.
I'm absolutely going to go check that out. And you know who my husband is. So the two-factor authentication thing has been a thing that I hate and drives me crazy, but he makes me do it. So it's attached to everything in our house already. But getting younger people in their 20s and 30s to update their computers is such a nightmare. Like we have kids that are working they have Macs and my daughter does. And how often she'll be like calling, like, I can't work today. And Mitch will be like, well, do you need to do some updates? And, it's 6 months old. And you're like, so I have another question, though. When you talk about companies trying to hack and security breaches, you said that a lot of them sit there waiting for the moment. How much of that happens? And how long, how many people create stuff and it just sits there for 3-4 months waiting? How long, how often, how common is that?
So here's the fundamental problem. Software and the internet, the power of software and the internet is connectivity. The internet started out universities trying to share information with each other. We had atmospheric scientists trying to share large amounts of data. The internet was not built to support global electronic commerce. It just wasn't. And so security is not inherent to software. Security is not inherent to any internet protocols. In order for something to be secure, it has to be secured on purpose. And the best way to ensure something is secured is to test it. Go after it with an attacker mindset, the offensive security mindset, test that software, find the vulnerabilities, fix the vulnerabilities. It's really the only way. And what happens is, if you're not even looking, the vulnerabilities are just sitting there. If you are looking, then at least you know where some of it is, and you are in a position to address it if you choose to. Now, there are trade-offs involved, right? Because security testing costs money, and addressing security problems cost resources and money. And this trade-off is where sort of the security complexity lies. But on one hand, it's actually simple, which is to say, do technical security testing, go and find those vulnerabilities, and then work with development teams to go and get it addressed.
And that is part of the bigger problem, because we are finding vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are now being found at a rate that we are not used to. Because now we have vulnerability databases, we have tools that are scanning for vulnerabilities, we're reporting them. And you know, of course, Jodi said I was going to talk about SBOM, so I have to kick this one in. If you don't have an SBOM, you don't necessarily know the vulnerabilities blast radius, and you don't know what the remediation step should be. So I often talk about the future where we have a FEMA-like response for vulnerabilities. Well, I don't have to wait. If somebody's found one, get it communicated. We lack collaboration in this area at a global level. And I've spoke to some people that says, well, we don't want people to know where those vulnerabilities are, because then hackers will know about it too. But the sooner we know about them, the sooner we can shut the door.
Oh, they already know. They already know.
They already know. That's what and we don't.
The
because
vulnerability
we're not,
database is public to everyone.
Everyone.
Whether you're
everyone.
a good person or a bad person, you know, it is equally accessible.
And the bad person is probably more likely to be hunting around the vulnerability database to find out the ones that they want to go and attack. And the good person is the one trying to get software out, right? They're the ones working and trying to get their software out. They're not thinking about looking at the vulnerability database every day. And if you don't know where those vulnerabilities are in your software supply chain, from a coding perspective, it's hard to get those fixes in. And then the remediation is not shared. So somehow the industry is going to have to get to a thinking about this in a FEMA response. Now, you talked about it. I think you talked about it. You said two terms. One was the hacker's mindset and an offensive mindset. Why don't you talk get a little deeper into that, so maybe we can better understand how to solve the cybersecurity problem?
Yeah. In my experience, talking to hundreds, thousands of security and development practitioners throughout the year 2023, there was a really big theme which emerged. And the theme which emerged is everyone's experiencing layoffs and everyone's experiencing budget cuts. And what does that mean for cybersecurity practices? It means there's simply less to go around. Whatever limited resources we had before to allocate towards managing different risks, that's now smaller. And so I would like to put out the idea that when thinking about a cybersecurity program, you can think about two domains, one which is defensive security controls and one which is offensive security controls. Multi-factor authentication is a perfect example of a defensive security control, one that I think is really important to do. So is updating your software. But an offensive approach says, to your point, Tracy, about attack surface, do I even know what my attack surface is? You know, am I aware of any sort of shadow domains, dangling domains? You know, what's out there that actually belongs to me that I'm responsible for that I may not be looking after? And once those assets are identified, security testing, whether that is scanning, DAS scanning, whether that is manual penetration testing, taking a look at your organization's digital assets and considering what it looks like to an attacker. And my thought is, by doing this, organizations have an opportunity to focus their very limited resources on addressing the items that come up in that offensive security analysis. Cobalt actually just published a report called the OffSec Shift Report, and it contains a bunch of data from thousands of security and development practitioners that talk about how budgets are shifting and organizations are investing more in offensive security for exactly this reason.
And, this concept is new to me, a concept of offensive. I think most of the things that I think about are defensive, right? Beyond just knowing what digital assets you have to manage. Is there other ways? I think offense, I'm a hockey person, we have a goalie, we have defensive players. Who are the players in that kind of that offensive world?
Hockey feels like the right analogy. Very physical, boom, boom, right? It's not subtle.
We have forwards and we have our wingers. And what are our forwards and wingers doing, right, to go and score? What are they up to?
I think, you've got sort of a few classic categories of attackers. You've got sort of the really big scary ones, nation states, but you've got others. You've got potentially, competition, searching for intellectual property. You've got your sort of typical, spray it all type of scammers who are just looking to make a buck any possibly way they can. Certainly ransomware is a big way in which people and organizations are being exploited. And these days, the thing about being a hacker is that hacker tools and approaches are not that expensive. You can buy a password cracking system and the storage required for it for less than $50. It's just not that hard to do. The bar is just not that high. So it doesn't require a lot of money. If you've got an internet connection and some know-how, then there's a lot of power on the attacker side. And I think as organizations, what we really need to do is we need to say, okay, what does our attack surface look like? What is our critical data, our critical systems that absolutely need to function? Let's do a bunch of security testing and let's make sure that the vulnerabilities that are found are fixed. And depending on how frequently we're updating our software, and everyone's updating their software all the time, we need to be testing those deltas on a regular basis. This, I think, is a very effective and efficient way to spend cybersecurity resources.
And boy, in our kind of our geopolitical environment right now, this is a really important topic. Between Russia and North Korea and Iran, right there, those three countries are, they're paying people to spend time to hack all of us. They are serious about it. This is a serious game to them. It's not just a discussion we're having about trying to secure our environments, right?
Yeah, we're not doing this for kicks. We're not doing this because it's a nice to have. We're doing this because attacks are happening all the time to all of us. I think it's so interesting. Some of the most recent SEC, activity with regards to SolarWinds. And while I don't personally know that I would go about it in exactly the same way as the SEC is doing, I do have a belief that what they're trying to accomplish is they're trying to put more of an emphasis on the idea that security is really not optional these days. It's really not optional. It really should not be optional. And while there are specifics about what's going on that are not, again, necessarily the way that I would personally go about it, I do see it being elevated to a different level of conversation. And for that, I think it's very, very appropriate.
Yeah, and I think that the Biden administration had made the right move to at least have the SBOM discussion started, saying, hey, if you're going to do business with the government, you better report to us what open source packages you're consuming, because we may not want to trust those packages. But I don't find that kind of data, even though we have it, is being consumed and acted upon. Yeah, I feel like it's still fragmented. It's still not. It's out there, but great. SBOMs, so far so good. So what, right?
One of the really interesting things that we have not figured out as an industry is how to effectively communicate technical security posture to each other and even SBOM information to each other in a standardized format. Every organization does it in a different way. And that means that every time you interact with another organization, and any given organization has got to have probably like 75 vendors. Larger enterprises are going to have hundreds, thousands of vendors. But without any sort of standard, or, in the case of our industry, actually, too many darn standards to choose from. The reality of, a person on that security team who's in a vendor risk management role, they've got to sort of sift through and figure out and interpret, each and every single one. So there ends up being just a tremendous amount of manual work involved if folks want to do it right.
Yes, there is a tremendous amount of toil right now in solving the cybersecurity puzzle, a tremendous amount. And I think we will face that for at least the next 5 to 6 years. Even in, my world, you're in the pen testing business, and I'm in the DevOps side. If we go back to our Jenkins, I repeat this many times because it's a good thing to remember. According to CloudBees, they track about 90 million workflows a month. 90 million. Now, I don't know if those are duplicated workflows. So let's just say it's 9 million workflows a month,
right.
and
even
each
so,
one are being executed thousands of times.
Right.
Even yes, it's a humongous number of DevOps pipelines that need to be updated to have security built into it. And this will be a challenge for us because there's an extreme amount of toil in being able to achieve that. So that being offensive, one way is to build it in there, right? The other way is maybe we talk about zero trust. So will zero trust get us out of this problem? And saying we're going to start blocking anything that comes from Russia or North Korea or Iran. We're going to just block them completely. Where are some big wins? Do you have any ideas, or have you thought about that?
So I do think that there is a lot of value that comes with zero trust, but I don't think it's possible for zero trust to be fully automated. And what happens is the manual work just gets shifted. From my perspective, in an ideal zero trust model, the most important stuff has a really big fence around it. And if someone tries to get in, some human with their judgment and their opinion is coming in and saying, yes, let them in, or no, do not. And that times 9 million ends up being, again, an extraordinary amount of work. I have a kind of a crazy idea that it would be fun to share with you on this session today, which is I happen to have a garden, and I observe the cycles of that garden throughout the season, and there's times when the seeds are just in the ground, and there's times when the plants are growing, and there's times when they're blooming, and there's times when they're wilting, and it's fall and it's turning to winter, and I actually think that software has this sort of cycle that it goes through as well. And there's a time when if software is not being looked after properly, maybe it should be sunset. But what we do is we treat all software all the time like it's in full bloom. And I think that's actually just not appropriate. I think it's actually just a fundamental misunderstanding. When we work in tech, right? People who don't work in tech, they just assume that everything software is supposed to work absolutely perfect all the time. And the reality is, some of us know that some software is being paid an incredible amount of attention to. And a lot of other software, people aren't paying attention to it. It's not being updated. All sorts of legacy stuff, all sorts of old integrations. And so I think it would be really interesting if we had a way to evaluate, is it time to sunset this particular piece of software because it's actually introducing more risk than value?
Really interesting. That's a really interesting thought. What can replace it? What's new out there? And boy, is it hard. Having a software company, it can be really hard to get customers off of old versions.
Totally.
Coming back to your point to say, upgrade your software, please upgrade your software, because we may know there's vulnerabilities out there, but we can't get folks to update their software because it may take some time. It may bring down, they may need to do a freeze for, an hour and a half. It may deny service for some period of time, but boy, isn't it important? And I think the better we get at, from a software perspective, and who does as a commercial vendor of software, the better we get at being able to have SaaS environments where we are managing the platform and updating this stuff for them.
Yep.
Is ultimately going to be, another way to be offensive in our approach to cybersecurity. Because what we're doing, it's not necessarily defensive. What we're doing is we're pushing away. We're going out after our criminals, right? We're going out after them and saying, no.
Yeah, it's really a proactive approach. I think that businesses have an awful lot of decision-making power that affects an organization's security posture. A funny little analogy that a friend of mine used to talk about was, he would say, if you have a toddler and that toddler is running around with a pair of scissors, the best thing to do is to take the scissors out of the toddler's hands. But how often do businesses and organizations just allow toddlers to run around with scissors?
There's a lot of toddlers running with scissors.
There's a lot of toddlers with scissors, and it is a business decision, and there are going to be trade-offs. That toddler is going to throw a big temper tantrum, and you're going to have to deal with it, but you're going to have mitigated the risk. And so I think this is both the complexity as well as what makes cybersecurity super fun, is all these different trade-offs and really having a lot of the time no right answer.
So when you talk about zero trust, just to backtrack a tiny bit, and you talk about all these instances, whether it's 90 million or 9 million or whatever, how much of all of this we're talking about, I'm just going to throw it out there, is AI going to help with? Because, right, one person can't say, let this person in, block this person. How much? I'm sure companies are already doing it, but I would assume AI is going to play a huge part because it can do all the massive work. And then a human can evaluate a smaller subset of that, right? As far as being able to manage it. Another amazing, application for AI.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that concept. I'm actually currently working on a new LinkedIn Learning course that I believe will launch sometime around August 2024. And this particular topic is about artificial intelligence and application security. And I do think that we have an opportunity for any bit of manual work that we do, whether it has to do with software development, whether it has to do with cybersecurity activities. There's a spectrum of how much can be taken on by AI. And at each stage of that spectrum, there's going to be an associated confidence level with
right.
how well we think they're going to do it. It's going to do it, And so there are going to be basic, very well known, often observed, often repeatable patterns that can be detected. And AI can even get to a point where it's making the decision, choosing the next action, but as soon as we move farther down that spectrum and things get to be a little more unusual, a little more customized, a little bit more of an edge case, that's where I think we have an opportunity to focus more of the manual effort. And so I don't happen to think that, AI is going to take all of our jobs. I do think that it will dramatically change the way in which we work. I said to my 8-year-old and my 11-year-old niece the other day, I said, here's an AI application that I want you to download on your iPad, because I want you to get used to using AI right now, right away. I said to them, anytime you would go on Google and ask Google a question, ask AI instead, because I would love for them to sort of naturally develop this capability for writing AI prompts.
Absolutely. I think it's a really, really good skill to learn how to, ChatGPT is teaching us all that. And I keep telling the story. I was waking up with my eyes totally swollen for like 3 weeks in a row, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I was working and I just asked, give me a diagnosis for swollen eyes and what's the symptoms? And the first thing they came up was dehydration.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to drink 60 ounces of water a day. And in 3 days, my eyes stopped being swollen. So I actually used it as for a medical condition.
That's
Well,
incredible.
Tracy and I have this conversation all the time because AI terrifies me. And she's like, AI is the coolest thing ever.
It's awesome.
So she's helping me like today. I'm like, this, another example where AI is going to be really helpful. And yes, another reason humans aren't going away. The whole concept that it's going to, there are going to be some shifts. There's everything with progress comes change, right? There's always going to be a shift. And that's why we retrain entire groups of people to do different things. But it's that way with everything. AI isn't any different, but it's cool I'm trying to find the good.
I'll tell you what.
Think about it this way. Think about it this way, Jodi. I was raised with encyclopedias.
Well, I'm not.
Encyclopedias went away. Encyclopedias went away when the internet became popular because you could find answers through the internet, but people's jobs didn't. Yeah. AI is the same thing. It's just we have a different relationship to data, and it's going to be displayed to us in a different way. It's a complete shift, but it's the same thing, right? It's the modern day encyclopedia.
Well, and Jodi, I'll tell you what, there are two fundamental reasons that I believe AI will not and cannot take over all of the work that we do. Thing number one is garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
AI works on data. And unless you have an enormous, perfect data set, your results are never going to be exactly right. Our data sets are biased. They're too small. They're wrong.
And they're shifting.
Yeah, exactly. So that's thing number one. The other thing is AI requires processes and algorithms. The AI does not know how to choose which process or which algorithm to run unless a human tells them so.
Right.
And if, because I work in the area of application security, I think about things like static testing and dynamic testing. I think about the differences between network security vulnerabilities and application security vulnerabilities. And if I have an AI and that AI is designed to work through a workflow having to do with finding network security vulnerabilities, and I point that at an app, it's not going to give me the results I want. Mm-hmm. We need people to dictate what type of process, what type of algorithm. It's like saying, to an automated, chef robot, make me a pumpkin pie. But if you put in the cheesecake recipe, you're not going to get a pumpkin pie. And so there is.
That is an amazing analogy. That is the best analogy.
Maybe
ever.
You'll get a cheesecake pumpkin pie.
There you go.
Get a cheesecake.
You'll probably get something delicious, but you're not going to get a pumpkin pie.
You will not get pumpkin. If there's no pumpkin in the recipe, you're not going to get a pumpkin pie. That's amazing. I'm sorry. That was a great analogy. I love that. I'm going to steal it.
So before we run out of time, this is a question I really love to ask our guest. And tell us what brought you to technology. You're passionate about it as I am, and as most of our guests are. How did you get started? Was there a woman in your life that said, hey, you need to go into tech? Give us a little bit of insights about your background.
It was my dad. I am the daughter of Chinese immigrants to the United States. When I was a little kid, my dad said, you know what? I'm going to buy you Mavis speaking typing software, because my dad was an attorney, and he had a really great secretary who typed on his behalf, but he was one of those one finger typers, and said, Caroline, in your lifetime, it's going to become really valuable for you to learn how to type quickly. And so I learned how to type quickly at the age of, 10 or something. And when I was about to go to college, he said to me, Caroline, what do you want to study in university? And I said, well, I love dance, so I'd love to study dance. And I think psychology is really interesting, so I'd love to study psychology. And he said, you're going to study engineering, and you're going to study the hardest engineering at the top school that you can get accepted to. And so I went and I studied electrical engineering and computer science at UC Berkeley. And that was that. It was just the culture of the family that I happened to grow up in. And while, I had all sorts of, I would say, behavioral and psychological responses to my father's extremely high expectations of me, he did instill a confidence and kind of like, maybe I don't know how to do this right now, but I can figure it out-ness about it. And now at this stage of my life, as a mother, and I'm looking at my kiddos and their lives are filled with technology, and I just want the world to be a safe and a happy place. I just want my kids to be able to use their computers and go on the internet and play their games and be safe and be connected and create without having to worry. That's what I want, And so I feel so grateful that I'm in this field and that I get to do this type of work.
It's interesting. Almost all of us, not all of us that are in this field, we had a parent or someone who really was forcefully directing us into it. It wasn't something that we saw that we should do for naturally, like a little boy might, right?
And
we had to have somebody
now.
Say, go for it.
It's different now. These days, I don't know exact statistics, but when I studied computer science in college, it was not typical. It certainly wasn't typical for a woman, but it kind of wasn't typical anyway. These days, I think there are so many more computer science graduates than there were at that point in time. And so these things do change. But I'm extremely grateful to my dad for pushing me in that way.
And I hope that the STEM programs that are, starting to really flourish throughout the U.S. in particular can serve, as your dad did to you, can serve to other young girls who may not have a parent that said, like my mother did, Tracy, you can't draw a straight line. You do math like crazy. You probably should go into some field of engineering. You probably shouldn't do, history is great, but it's not going to get you the job you want. And go do math.
What else is crazy, though, is we've had these conversations. And Tracy, how many times have we asked this question? And it started out with, I played an instrument. I like to do drama. I like dance. So much of what we don't acknowledge is that the arts are so important. Just as an example, my daughter's now an actress. She went to the Denver School of the Performing Arts here in Denver. It's a public school, open to any kid who auditions and gets in, 12 different majors. We also have a STEM school, the School of Science and Technology. Do you know which school is on the U.S. World and Report top schools and gets the best standardized test scores? The School of the Arts beats the Science and Technology School every year because they have art in their curriculum every day. And the kids that just go to the science schools don't. But I hear so many of you guys who we've interviewed have an artist in them of drawing or dancing or music. And it so stimulates everybody, and it's so important and needs to be there.
You have to have both, right?
You have to.
You can't just copy everything. You have
both
to
sides
have
of your brain working.
You have to have both sides of your brain working. So I think that is why women are so perfectly kind of positioned to be in technology. And one area that, if you're listening and you're a young college student and you're a woman, think about going into cybersecurity. It is going to be a hot space, and it's going to be around. It's going to be, everybody's going to be pushing it for at least the next 5 to 8 years. So consider going into cybersecurity or any area in defense.
Yeah, get your daughters in coding classes. Our granddaughter's middle school, and she loves it. She thinks it's fun, and they do it in school, and she thinks it's the coolest thing. Her brother, not so much, but that's okay.
Good, that's great.
Exactly. Well, I think we're like right at the end of our window here, but Caroline, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited that you got to join us. I can't wait to see you at RSA in May. And, we just really appreciate you taking the time. We know you're a busy lady and your time is super full. So we appreciate you being here with us today. Trace, you got anything?
No, but thank you, Caroline, for a fabulous journey into the world of cybersecurity.
This was so fun. Thank you both.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us. Hey, everybody. That's a wrap on today's episode of Tech Strong Women. Be sure and stay tuned. There's a lot more great content and programming today. So be sure and watch, and we'll see you next time on Tech Strong Women. Bye.